The Nintendo DS defined a generation of handheld gaming, but let's be real, trying to play on original hardware in 2025 isn't always a great experience. The screens are dim, the resolution is low, and finding DS hardware that's in good condition is getting more expensive every single day. Enter the ANBERNIC RG-DS. This is a brand new dual screen clamshell designed for one specific purpose: to be the best way to play the Nintendo DS library in the modern era. It has the layout that we love, but does the tech inside back it up? Well, we're looking at dual screen 4-inch IPS displays to make those old pixels absolutely pop. Because it's running the RK3568 chipset, we can finally upscale some of these games from their original resolution. You toss in USB-C charging, Hall effect sticks, and a battery that actually lasts, and it looks like it might be a dream machine. But is it a perfect one-to-one replacement to the original Nintendo DS? Well, from the screen aspect ratios to the way that the software handles the dual display setup, there are some quirks that you need to know before you sell your old DS and pick up one of these RGDSs from ANBERNIC. Today, we're diving deep into the build, the screens, the gameplay, and to see if the RGDS is truly the new king of budget dual screen gaming. Now, one thing that I absolutely want to make sure that I point out when talking about the RGDS is the fact that there's a lot of reviews out there that you've probably already have seen that have said that this device is pretty terrible. And at the time, those were 100% accurate. Because what happened is reviewers got these in their hands early and the firmware was not quite finished cooking yet. I really think that ANBERNIC made a huge mistake by shipping these out to reviewers before they had finished firmware, because what reviewers experienced was, I would say, enough to make this an absolute 100% avoid. That being said, ANBERNIC listened to all of the feedback that reviewers gave and addressed it with updated firmware, and now most of the problems that people were complaining about with the RGDS have been solved. Specifically, the top screen was stuck at 40 Hz instead of 60 Hz. So if you were playing a game that used both the top screen and the bottom screen, and the top and bottom screens were like extensions of each other, you could easily see when the screens were out of sync, and this would make a terrible experience. And if ANBERNIC had not updated the firmware in order to fix those issues, I would be telling you the same thing that all of those other reviewers would have said, that you should avoid this device at all costs. That being said, by the time that this device got to me, because I didn't get an early review unit, by the time this got to me, those problems were fixed, and I didn't even have to do an update in order to see those problems having been fixed. So I think it's safe to say that a lot of the reviews that are negative about this device that you're seeing, they're accurate, but they're also out of date, and that's something you want to keep in mind. I'm not saying that they're wrong and that you should run out and buy this. I mean, I have a lot more to say about this device, but keep in mind that those old reviews were from old firmware, and a lot of fixes have happened since then. All right, here, this is the RGDS, and as you can see, they chose a very glossy plastic for the top of the device, so it is going to be a fingerprint magnet. However, because of the color of the plastic, it's not really showing those fingerprints up super well, which is great. I imagine if this were a black device, the fingerprints would be really, really easy to see. Up on the top, we have our microphone. So if you're playing a game like Nintendogs or something where you have to shout at the game in order to get something to happen, that's where you're going to be shouting at. This is just like on the original DS. Let's take a look at the outside of the device. Starting with the right-hand side, we have our volume buttons and our power button, as well as some LED indicators here. On the bottom of the device, we have our 3.5mm headphone jack, as well as 2 spots for you to hook up a lanyard. This does come with a lanyard, although I never used the lanyard. On the right-hand side, there's nothing there. And then on the very top, we have 2 USB ports, as well as our SD card reader or SD card slot. This USB port is OTG, which I think it means that it's used for like controllers or, transferring files over, that kind of thing. But you can also charge your device at the same time using this USB port, which is really good to hear. On the top, we have our inline triggers and our bumpers, R1, R2, L1, and L2, and these are very, very tactile, and they're borderline loud. Here, give this a listen. Let's go ahead and open it up, and the first thing that I notice is that this hinge is an incredibly tight hinge. Like, I am moving this slow, not because I'm trying to move slow so that you can see it like in great detail or anything. I'm moving slow because it's I'm not going to say difficult to push. Like, if I really wanted to open it up fast, I could, but I have to like put some effort into that. It's a very tight hinge, and you'll notice it doesn't have any stopping points. For example, this is the AYN Thor. If I open this up, you can see how easy it is to move. Like, it's much easier to move, no effort at all to move this thing. But if I open it, it stops at that spot, and then it stops at that spot, and then it stops fully open. With this, there are no built-in stops, but because there's no built-in stops, that means that you can put it wherever you want and it's going to stay exactly there. And the thing that I like about this is because it's so tight, like because that hinge is so tight, you really have to work in order to get this to move unless you absolutely want it to. Now, whether or not this holds up over time, that's always something that you have to be concerned about. And we have no way of knowing how well this hinge will hold up over time until we start to see failures. Up on the top, next to the screen, you can see we have our front-firing speakers. I love that they put the speakers up here. That's great. On the AYN Thor, the speakers are down here, which is fine, but most of the time they're covered by my thumbs. Now, that really doesn't affect the audio too bad for the AYN Thor, but that's definitely not going to be an issue here because at no point am I going to have my thumbs up here on the top screen. Let's talk about the controls. We've got our D-pad on the left, and that D-pad feels not like micro switchy, but it doesn't feel super mushy either. It's somewhere in between mushy and micro switchy. I would say it feels tactile, but without taking it apart and seeing what kind of switches they have under here, I have no idea. All right, let's go ahead and give the contra test a try. For the contra test, all you have to do is you push down on the D-pad. You can see that your character drops down into the prone position. And as I rock my thumb back and forth, I'm not getting a lot of accidental diagonals, which is good. If I set it down flat on the table and then I try it with my finger, though, you're going to see a lot of accidental diagonals. And that's not a huge surprise. I would say that this is an okay D-pad when it comes to accidental diagonals. Let's go ahead and see how it works in a game like Street Fighter. Hey, one thing that I'm running into is I'm having a really hard time pulling off Hadoukens in Street Fighter 2 for the Super Nintendo. There's just something about this D-pad that's making it hard for me to do those. And the same thing can be said for Shoryukens. Like, I'm really struggling to get those Shoryukens to fire off when I want them to. I do find that it's easier to get the moves to go off when I'm fighting, when my character's on the right side of the screen and I'm fighting to the left. But whenever my character's on the left side of the screen and I'm fighting to the right, I really struggle with those moves. The face buttons feel very similar to the D-pad. The rest of the buttons down here on the bottom, we have our start and select over here on the right-hand side. And then on the left-hand side, we have our home button for Android and our back button for Android. If you hold down, it presses the home button. If you just push it, it goes back. And then here we have our ANBERNIC button, which launches the ANBERNIC launcher. Now, most of the time, I won't use the ANBERNIC launcher. Instead, I'll load emulation station emulation station on these devices. However, apparently there's a bug with, or not a bug, but something hasn't been updated with emulation station to work with these dual screens, and that causes a problem on this device specifically. And so I've been using the ANBERNIC launcher instead. It's fine, but I do prefer the emulation station. If you just single press this, you can see that it switches which which screen you are dealing with. So if I press it again, you can see it switches down to this screen, push it again, it goes up to this screen, and now I'm back on the bottom. So here I can go back and forth between the different games that systems that I have on here. If I push this again and now I push left and right, nothing happens because now it's set all of my inputs to the top screen. So if ever you're having trouble interacting and you need to make it go to a different screen, that's what that button right there does. All right, so the first thing that I want to show off on here is the whole reason that I would get a device like this, and that is for Nintendo DS games, not 3DS games, because 3DS games run like absolute garbage on here. This system is not powerful enough to run 3DS games. This is for Nintendo DS games. And yes, you can also play games like GBA games on here, or you can play games like Nintendo Entertainment System N64 if you want to put yourself through the torture of using that left stick. But for me, this is a Nintendo DS system, so let's launch into that, and we'll find a game to launch and see how it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and launch Advanced Wars Dual Strike, and as you can see now, it's switched over to put everything on both screens here. And this is a really, really great experience. I'm going to go ahead and skip this. Touch to start. Oh, I almost forgot. It also comes with a stylus. This is really loud. Let me turn this down. It comes with a stylus, and it has two sides. It has this side, which is like one of those rubber things, but underneath, on this side, it has one of those weird disc-shaped ones. I've never used one of those disc-shaped ones before. I wish that if I take off the cap, that I could put the cap on the other side, but because of this weird little rubber nib here, they don't have a spot to put the cap on the other side. So when you take it off, you just have to like leave the cap off to the side, and I feel like that's going to get lost or misplaced. But if I wanted to play this game, I can go ahead and hit campaign, new game, and as you can see, it runs the games just fine. Let's talk about the sticks. The original DS never had thumbsticks, and I wish that they had just stuck with the original DS layout for this device, because these might be the worst sticks that I have ever used in my entire life. The top of the sticks are incredibly smooth, which means when you're pushing forward on, let's say, the left stick in a game, what happens is that left stick, it's so smooth that it starts to slide away from your finger because of the resistance of the thumbstick. Like it's kind of pushing back, and your finger, like you have to push real hard to hold it in place because the stick is just so smooth on top. On top of that, they're also very, very small, and they're recessed a lot, which they have to be recessed a lot because of the clamshell design. But because they're recessed so far, you just really don't have very much throw with the stick. And honestly, if you're asking me, I would say if you want to play games that require the use of sticks, either one stick or two sticks, I'm talking N64 or anything after that, I would not play any of those games on this device because the sticks are literally that bad. They do click in, which is nice. So they will have one use, and that would be for like, you know, I could bind left click and left stick click and right stick click together to like bring up a menu or something like that in RetroArch, for instance. But that's the only thing that I would use these sticks for, because these sticks are terrible. Okay, we've loaded up Sonic Rush, and the thing about this game is the top screen and the bottom screen are supposed to be like one continuous level, so Sonic goes between them. And if you have any elements that are on the top screen but not and on the bottom screen, if things are not set up right, then they won't line up properly. And as you can see, if I move back and forth, well, I'm doing the same test that I saw some other people do with before it was working. And you can see that it's much better than it used to be here. I don't have any footage of what it was like before the update because mine came shipped with the latest update, which actually fixed that. I would say I do see a tiny little bit of delay between the top screen and the bottom screen, but not enough that it would actually affect my enjoyment of this game. And so I think that, you know, if you're looking for a device that is just going to be playing DS games, this is a really, really good option. But maybe I want to adjust the brightness. So if I swipe down on the bottom screen here, I can bring up the the brightness of both screens, and I can adjust them independently of each other, which is really, really nice. By default, they're both at maximum brightness, and honestly, I think that looks fine at maximum brightness. Another thing that I noticed is because I touched the bottom screen, the top screen automatically just pauses and lets me do whatever it is that I want to do on the bottom screen. And then the next time that I hit a button, because the last thing that I touched was the bottom screen, if I push A here, what it's going to do is it's going to launch another version of Shining Force, although they knew that would happen. So when I push it, it says, hey, you already have this game running. Do you want to launch the game, or do you want to just go back to the game that you have running? And if I hit old game, you can see that this picks up exactly where it left off. Again, if I touch the bottom screen, the top screen pauses. This is a really, really good implementation of how that should work. I like that a lot. Let's take a look at the technical specifications. I want to start off with the OGDS has a screen resolution of 256 by 192 pixels. The RGDS has two screens that are both 640 by 480. Now, one good thing about those two things is both of these are 4:3 aspect ratio screens. And because of that, you would think that this would mean it would have absolutely perfect pixel upscaling, but it doesn't, because you have to go at a 2.5 2.5 upscaling resolution. This means it is not perfect integer scaling. If you want to use integer scaling, then you would have to do a 3.2 inch image on the 4-inch screen. This would be a 2x resolution, or a 4-inch image with no bezels, and again, that's 2.5 inch scaling. This means that some of the pixels are going to be imbalanced if you are doing non-integer scaling, and therefore you're going to have to throw shaders on there. I will say that I'm not really running into any issues that bother me. I'm not somebody who is a pixel perfect purist, but for pixel perfect purists out there, you're definitely either going to be using integer scaling or shaders in order to get what you're looking for. Sticking with the screens, both screens are touch sensitive. They are capacitive screens, not resistance screens or resistive screens. The original DS, the bottom screen, was the only one that was touch sensitive, and it was a resistive touch screen. The way that resistive screens work is basically you have like two layers, and when you push down on the top layer, it makes contact with the bottom layer. And when it makes contact with the bottom layer, well, then it knows that that's the point on the screen where you are actually touching. However, capacitive screens are coated with transparent conductive material, and when you touch them with your finger or a capacitive stylus, it draws some of the charge away from the screen, which lets you know, or which lets the system know where exactly you're touching. This uses capacitive screens instead of resistive screens, which I mean, when I had my DS, I always wished that it had capacitive screens instead, because capacitive screens, they're more responsive when you're touching them. That said, if you are looking for a one-to-one perfect DS analog, then resistive screens would have been a better use. For me, I would gladly get rid of the resistive screen in favor of capacitive screens because I think that they're better. It has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, which should last about 6 hours, depending on what games you're playing, what systems you're emulating. I think that 6 hours is plenty of time for devices like this, especially something as pocketable as this. It also has front-firing speakers on either side of the top screen, and here's how they sound. And it has a Hall effect magnetic switch on the handheld so that it detects when you're closing the handheld, and it automatically puts the system into sleep mode. And because it's an Android system, the sleep mode lasts pretty well. It lasts for a long time when it's in sleep. It also comes in 3 different colorways. There's red and black, polar white, and then the one that they sent me is turquoise blue, which every time my wife walks into the room, she says that is a very pretty handheld. And she's not wrong. This one looks absolutely fantastic. And the price for this device? $95, which honestly, when compared to other dual screen handhelds, it's a really great entry point, especially if you really want to focus on the DS games. Which brings us to what's it going to play. I'm going to tell you right now, do not bother trying to play any 3DS games on there. Almost none of them are going to work. This is a unitasker that is made, purposely built for DS gameplay. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't play Nintendo games or Game Boy games or Sega Genesis games or anything like that. If you are looking to play 8 and 16-bit systems and also have access to the DS library with 2 screens, then this device might be for you. But if you're looking for something that needs a little bit more power than that, then do not get this device. This is for those specific systems and nothing else, because if you try and push this too hard, you're just going to have a bad time. And there's just better options out there anyway. So in conclusion, I think the things that I like about it, I like the form factor. It really feels like a Nintendo product. It's really well built. I like it a lot. The hinge feels great to open and close. It's super sticky as you're moving it back and forth. That is a really good feature. This is a really great hinge. It's also super pocketable and it's cheap. What I don't like about it, I don't like ANBERNIC's launcher. I think ANBERNIC's launcher is pretty terrible, and I can't wait until Emulation Station, or ESDE, Emulation Station Desktop Edition, gets updated so that you don't run into the issues that people currently run into when they're trying to launch DS games on this particular device. The other thing that I don't like about it are the absolutely terrible sticks and the fact that it's super glossy. It does pick up a lot of fingerprints, but that's kind of a quibble. Like, that's not that big of a deal. But what do you guys think about the RGDS? Are you interested in dual screen gaming, or do you think that you should save up and spend I'm not going to say a little more money, I'm going to say a lot more money on the AYN Thor, which I do have a review of linked down below. Which one do you think works best for what you want it to do? Well, let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below that like button. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. From the Nerd Nest, I'm Bill. Stay rad. Thanks for watching.